Welcome back to the DFS Den. It's Dave Eddy here, aka Corporal Eddy on Twitter. We're back at it, week 7 of the NFL DFS season. I'm actually a little bit nervous this week, and if you followed along with baseball when I was doing baseball DFS, it's kind of something very similar because there was a particular slate where I had a really good feel for the slate, and there was a lot of, contrarian, not chalk plays that I was pretty confident in, and we absolutely smashed that slate. And I got to tell you, looking over things, at least as it sits right now, I know it's still a little early in the week, but I kind of have a very similar feeling about this week 7 here for NFL DFS. So I'm not proclaiming, that we're going to sit there and, end up with, an oceanfront beach house after this week, but man, I sure do like a lot of things this week that not everybody else is on. So I got a good feeling. We'll see what happens. But before we get too far into things, I do want to give a shout out to my sponsor here. This week it is the Peanut Shop here in beautiful Lansing, Michigan. Our nuts, your mouth, the Peanut Shop. Make sure that when you stop in, you give them code Dave for 7% off of your first purchase. So I hope you enjoy their nuts. And with that in mind, before we hop fully into things, what I want you to do is go ahead and hit subscribe if you have not done so yet. You can turn on the notifications so you get an alert every single time a new video comes out. That way, you catch everything, not just myself, but all the other great content coming out from Fantasy Six Pack. You catch it as soon as it comes out and why it's the most fresh. And then go ahead, drop a like on this real quick. I'll give you a second. Okay, all of that out of the way. Let's go ahead and let's get into the quarterbacks. And we always start with cash. And I've got two options that I'm debating on here this week. They're both similarly priced. I like Lamar Jackson going against the Browns, 8K on DK. He's always in play for cash. His ability, to obviously pass, but, run the ball. His ability on the ground makes him very viable for cash because obviously that raises his floor, quite significantly. We got Allen and Hurts and, even like, Murray not on this slate here. So that makes Lamar, a pretty easy choice. Patrick Mahomes going against 49ers coming in 7.8K on DraftKings. Slightly cheaper, slightly lower ceiling, but truth be told, a higher floor, even without the ability to run, just because he's such a great quarterback, than what we get here with Lamar. Now, of course, we're more concerned with floor than ceiling. So I might be more apt to play Mahomes, but right now I actually do have Jackson in as my cash quarterback. The beautiful thing about Mahomes, though, in cash is you don't have to worry about who to stack him with. And MME, it gets a little more difficult. But with cash, you can just run him out there naked. I'm not sure if I'm going to eventually move to Mahomes or not. Like I said, I'm sitting Jackson right now. But, if the $200 makes a difference, I'm very happy to move now into Patrick Mahomes in cash. Now let's get to MME because cash quarterbacks here at MME, I've got a few plays that, like I mentioned at the top, that I like that I don't think a lot of people are going to be on. We'll start up at the top though with the guys we basically just covered, but from an MME point of view, again, Lamar Jackson against the Browns, only running quarterback on the slate this week, so raises his ceiling, quite a bit. At the moment, though, surprisingly, not even coming into the top 5 owned quarterback this week. Now, so long as Andrews is in, Lamar is someone I'm definitely going to be playing in MME. If Andrews is forced to miss this game, or I think he's going to be limited, I will just go elsewhere. There are quite a few quarterbacks, like I said, that I can wrap my head around playing this week that are all going to come in at fairly low ownership. And we'll talk Patrick Mahomes again here real quick against the Niners. Coming in even lower owned than Lamar without any of the injury concerns either about him or around him. Like I said, though, biggest question for me with Mahomes is who do I stack him with? And I think, the obvious answer is going to be Kelsey. you can obviously put MVS in there. You can put Juju in there. But for my money, it's going to be Travis Kelce. He's the guy that I can rely on. The other guys, could randomly have a pretty big game, and that could be the path to success as well. But I'm going to stick with Kelce. And you can, have a bring back of either Debo or Ayuk. Both of those are very feasible. I will say, though, Mahomes, Kelce, and Debo, that's going to be very pricey. And there's not a lot of great value on this slate. So you obviously can make it work, but it's going to be difficult. And you really at that point need ceiling games from those three guys, which is very possible. And then you have to somewhat hit on, your more volatile, lower priced options. So it's definitely something that could take down a tournament, but the path is not easy. But granted, when's it ever easy to take down a tournament with tens and hundreds of thousands of entries that we're going up against each week here in NFL DFS? Next guy, got to talk about Dak Prescott going up against my Detroit Lions. Only 6.7K on DK. Coming back from an injury, gets a dream matchup against, these lowly Lions. For Dak, for me this week, it's going to be a matter of me just simply monitoring how popular he is this week. And I'm just going to do whatever the field isn't. If Dak is going to be popular, happy to do a full fade. If he's going to go under-owned, then I'm happy to play him. As it sits now, though, he's coming in just about 10%. So it's looking like it's going to be a fade for me. I would imagine his ownership gets steamed, if anything, not gets dropped. So more likely, I'm not going to be, playing him. But I will say this about the Cowboys. I am targeting Michael Gallup this week over CeeDee Lamb. Jeff Okudah is going to almost surely be matched up with CeeDee Lamb. And under the radar, he's been really good this year at shutting down top wide receivers in the league. More than anything, I also like the idea of $1,700 cheaper Gallup in a game where, he's also going to have a third of the ownership. So for me, Michael Gallup over CeeDee Lamb this week. One of the things I was telling you about at the top of the show here, which I'll keep referencing, where I feel like I've got a good handle on this slate this week. We'll see what happens. Matt Ryan going up against the Titans, 5.4K. I know you've got to hold your breath on this one, but I think it's very much in play. Titans have given up the fourth most points to quarterbacks this year. And you can decide to pay up for Pittman as your stacking partner here, or you can choose to pay down for Alec Pierce. I'm fully fading Jonathan Taylor this week. There's a long history of running backs coming off of his high ankle injury, and it's usually taken them a couple weeks to get back on track, right into the full swing of things. So I'm off of Jonathan Taylor, and that also does help lead me into these Matt Ryan stacks. I also love the idea of bringing this back with Derrick Henry. And if you want to kind of hold your nose, to go along with your breath, Robert Woods is in play here as the run back option as well, coming in just outside the top 10 over the last 3 weeks in target share at 27.3%. So I think Matt Ryan is viable this week, and you can game stack it as well. Now, if you want to really get crazy, and damn it, the more I look at this, the more I'm liking it. Davis Mills going up against the Raiders at 5K. Listen, you probably hated the Matt Ryan play, so you probably really hate this one. But man, I'm telling you, the more I look at it, the more I like it. Raiders are giving up the most points to quarterbacks of any team so far this year. Emergence of Dameon Pierce should continue. And I think that just further opens up the field for Mills and the passing game. I do plan on avoiding Brandon Cooks this week. I'm going to focus on my Michigan man, Nico Collins, in stacks with Davis. And I'm also going to be bringing along Devontae Adams. Again, Nico Collins over Brandon Cooks, another one of those things that I think I have a good handle on for this week that's different than what everyone else is doing. I think Collins makes for really good leverage off of Cooks, who's going to be twice as owned. And Collins hasn't been returning terrible value. He's been returning decent value, but he hasn't scored a touchdown yet. So if you can get a game like what he's been having all year and you get that touchdown, now you're looking real good. As far as Adams goes, he's an absolute elite player. Nobody denies that. But this week, he also provides you leverage off of a very, very chalky Josh Jacobs. Anytime I can get leverage and play an elite player at the same time, I'm going to be overweight on that play. Always. This is an opportunity to do that. And there'll be another opportunity later on that we'll get to, but really like Devontae Adams there this week. Let's get into running backs. We'll start with cash, of course. Josh Jacobs going up against the Texans at 6.5K on DraftKings. Going to be a cash lock for me. Price is just too good. Volume has been even better. He's going to be the highest owned running back on the slate. So, that goes for cash and it goes for MME. I'm just locking him into cash. Dameon Pierce, opposite side of the field there, going up against the Raiders. Very similar prices at 6.4K. In cash, I'm not worried about playing opposing running backs. Both of these guys are seeing work in the passing game as well as the ground, so I'm not really too concerned about playing them together in cash. Like Jacobs, I think Pierce is probably just going to be a cash lock for me. Jacobs for sure. Pierce we'll see, but probably. Austin Eckler against the Seahawks coming in at a hefty 8.3K. He's pricey, but the matchup is just pure gold this week. Typically, I like to run 3 running backs in cash, so definitely viable here, even with the probability of Jacobs and Pierce already, being in play. And I think you can make his salary work. It's just kind of a matter of where do you want to spend up in cash this week. You can do so at tight end. I'm already doing so at quarterback. What do you want to do at wide receiver? Do you want to spend that money where? Austin Eckler probably is about as good of a play as you're going to find this week. It's just a matter of making the price work. Joe Mixon going up against Atlanta at 7K on DK. He's been pretty disappointing so far for MME this year, but he has shown that he has a solid floor, and that's what we care about in cash. It's kind of hard, though, to justify playing Mixon, but if you want to get off Jacobs, you want to get off Pierce, you want to save some money off of Eckler, you can definitely make it work. And, he has shown he's shown a pretty solid floor this year. Just the ceiling hasn't been there for him. But again, we're talking cash, so I'm not super worried about that ceiling at this point for these lineups. Kenneth Walker going to come against the Chargers, 5.8K. The volume's going to be there. The price is great for him. Very similar play here for me to Pierce. I think a lot of people are going to just simply jam in Jacobs, jam in Pierce, jam in Walker, and then go ahead and move on. I probably am going to be right there with him. As much as I like Eckler, I think I'd rather just spend down here and throw Kenneth Walker in there for cash, of course. Now let's talk MME. We're going to talk some of the same names as well here, but in a different perspective. Again, Josh Jacobs, going up against the Texans, 6.5K, chalkiest player on the slate. For leverage purposes, I think it's going to be a full fade for me on Jacobs. Listen, he's been on fire the past 2 weeks. Basically 150 yards on the ground and a touchdown while catching passes each of the last 2 weeks. I've never really trusted Jacobs. He's never really panned out for me in MME, and I think that trend continues here. So many other running backs that are good plays to me on this slate that I think a full fade for Jacobs is a pretty easy choice for me. If he ends up burning me, so be it. I'll live with it. Saquon Barkley going up against the Jags, 7.9K. Similar to Jacobs here, and the fact that I plan a full fade on Saquon Barkley. Quite frankly, I'm concerned. I'm concerned about that shoulder. And to me, the last couple of weeks here, he just has not looked right. He's still been producing, but the inability for him to stay healthy is why I was completely off him in redraft. And I just got a bad feeling that that Saquon is about to have this injury really start to affect him. And so again, with so many good options this week at running back, I don't feel the need to play Saquon here. So I'm just going to take my chances elsewhere. Jonathan Taylor going up against the Titans, 8.1K. As I mentioned earlier when I was talking about Matt Ryan, I do not believe in JT this week. I don't think he comes back and has a good week in his first action off of that, tricky ankle injury. Full fade for me on Jonathan Taylor. Let's get to guys here. I'll give you two guys that I'm really liking here in MME. Joe Mixon, we talked about him in cash. But this is one of those quote unquote contrarian plays that for MME I like this week. Mixon is definitely one of the guys in that mix. Bengals passing game is getting steamed this week. After Burrow and Chase won people a lot of money in tournaments last week. To be fair, like I said, Mixon has been subpar, but the volume has not gone away, both in the air and on the ground. Kind of same as my thoughts on Devontae Adams here. If I can gain leverage and play a good player, I'm always going to be overweight there. Mixon is great leverage off of that Cincinnati passing game, and he's a good player. So I'm going to take my chances with Joe Mixon and MME this week. Breece Hall going up against the Broncos, and even 6K on DraftKings, still coming in underpriced even after a string of great games for what I think is a clear RB1 here for the Jets. Denver defense does scare me a little bit, but I'm more hopeful that it scares off my opponents even more. I've always been a firm believer in volume over matchup when it comes to running backs in DFS. And listen, I hate to say this. I hate to dare him to prove me wrong. But with the skills that he's shown so far at the NFL level, I do kind of wonder if he isn't game script proof. Kind of like a McCaffrey where he gets he can handle a big workload on the ground, but he's also elite in the passing game. So while I think that this is going to be a low, or at least a lower scoring game, I hope that gets ownership off of Breece here. And I think that Breece can even get there, granted not with a ceiling performance, obviously, but I think he can get there value-wise, even without falling into the end zone, even though I think that is a decent bet that he will do that. All right, let's get to wide receivers. For cash, I'm looking at you, Tyler Lockett. Going against the Chargers, 5.8K. DK continues to misprice Lockett here. Like I said, 5.8K, he just continues to have a very reasonable salary. And he's given you great production so far as well. Now, his poor showing last week probably is what kept the price down here this week. I think if he would have had another big game, I think we'd see a higher price, but who knows? Either way, I think that he clearly is an option for you again here this week in cash. I'm a little hesitant to play two Seahawks together in cash. Not saying that I won't. It's certainly viable, but I just haven't decided what I'm going to do about Lockett and Walker. Probably almost surely going to play one. May or may not play both. Romeo Doubs going against the Commanders, coming in at even 5K on DraftKings. His price does continue to creep up, but it's still very reasonable, especially for a guy who's seen 8+ targets in 3 of the last 4 weeks. Allen Lazard has been better, and Sammy Watkins is potentially back in the mix again this week. So you're going to kind of have to monitor the situation. But as it sits right now, he's definitely a cash consideration for me. Alec Pierce going up against the Titans, 4.6K. On a slate that is currently without, a lot of good, cheap options, Pierce becomes an even stronger play for me, specifically in cash. He's not been spectacular, but he has been really good, especially in cash, because he has hit 3x on his value each of the last 3 weeks, with enough volume for his price to make him someone that, barring a lot of value opening up, is probably going to be a guy here that I lock in cash. And then last guy I want to talk about, Chris Godwin going up against the Panthers, 6.3K on DraftKings. Continues to see his price basically roam around the same area, very similar to Lockett. He's also been extremely consistent so far since coming back from an injury. The last, he's had at least 6 games where he's 2x on his price. So, far from a cash game lock for me, but certainly someone that, you've got to strongly consider. And then we talk MME here. Nico Collins. Going up against the Raiders, 4.2K. I mentioned earlier while talking about Davis Mills, I really like Nico this week. Not as much as we would like to see as far as salary savers this week. So his price tag, certainly a sight for sore eyes. Brandon Cooks is going to be much popular. and he's going to be a much popular mini stacking partner for people with Jacobs or even Devontae Adams. So give me some Nico this week. And I really like the mini stack of him and Devontae Adams to add some leverage off of the Jacobs chalk and get you a little bit different from the guys that are playing Cooks as well. Speaking of Devontae Adams, love him in MME this week, going up against Houston, like I was just talking about there with Nico. He comes in at 8.7K, and I've already talked quite a bit about Adams before we've actually gotten to him here at this point, but let me just recap a little bit, all right? Great leverage off of Jacobs chalk this week. Again, getting leverage while playing an elite receiver is an absolute dream come true in my eyes. His price on this slate without, very much obvious value, I think also keeps his ownership down. So give me a lot of Devontae Adams this week, especially with his league leading 35% target share over the last 3 weeks. So again, lead player and gain leverage. I'm all about it. Robert Woods going up against the Colts. He's coming in 5.5K. Another guy I talked about already, when discussing Matt Ryan stacks. Robert Woods been averaging, or not averaging, he's got a top 15 target share over the last 3 weeks. So he's been getting the ball. He's been getting lots of targets. His price does give you some salary relief. Again, 5.5K is not a lot, but it's not like it's a punt either. And you can definitely mini stack him with Alec Pierce in a way that I think makes you a little bit different, but more than anything, saves you some salary while getting correlation and some upside in your lineup. So I like Robert Woods, not necessarily as a one-off here. I like him as a, pairing partner in a mini stack with Pierce while you save that salary. I'm not going to be heavy on Woods. Like I said, don't like him as a one-off, but he's someone I like a lot more than the field this week. And then last guy I want to talk about here, wide receivers, Donovan Peoples-Jones, again, another Michigan man for me, going up against the Ravens, coming in 4.1K on DraftKings, another salary saver that I like a lot more than the field. DPJ actually been giving you about 3x on your value for almost the last month, and he has done that without scoring a touchdown. So if we continue to see his 4 catches and 70-yard games, and he finally hits pay dirt, all of a sudden he becomes one hell of a low-owned salary saver. So I like him in my, Lamar stacks as a run back. I think that he's a nice play this week. And then let's go ahead, pop on over here to tight end. And cash, we got Andrews and we got Kelsey. Andrews against the Browns at 7.4K. Kelsey against the Niners at 8K. Hard to pay up for tight end this week in cash. But it's possible if you want to make it happen. You just got to decide who that person you want to pay up is. Hard to argue with Andrews, hard to argue with Kelsey, even though Kelsey is going to be a little bit harder, even if, only because of the, the extra 6K. I prefer Andrews over Kelsey. We do need to monitor Andrews' status this week, though. We want to ensure he's going to be 100%. As much as I want to play either one of these two guys, again, without there being much value, especially for cash, I think paying down at tight end is probably the way you have to go this week. I'm pretty sure that's the way I'm going to go. As such, I've got a couple of names here for you. Gerald Everett going up against the Seahawks, coming in at 4K. A little bit of a revenge game here, but ultimately he's the tight end I'm most likely to play in cash. It's not a full pay down option, of course, at a 4K salary, but his salary isn't going to limit you, obviously, nearly as much as, $3,000-$4,000 more with Andrews and Kelsey. And you got to make sure he's healthy. He is on the injury report right now, but we're assuming he's playing. So assuming he is healthy and in, this is probably where I said I'm going to be going here. Really like the matchup against the Seahawks. They've been absolutely torched by tight ends this year. We'll get into that a little bit more here when we talk about MME, but Evan Ingram going up against the Giants, 3.3K on DraftKings. A little bit of a cheaper option than Everett. Still not quite a full pay down, though. But again, another revenge kind of narrative here. Evan Ingram going up against the Giants. So far this year, he has returned value, but he's at a price where I think I'd either rather just simply pay up a little bit more for Everett, or I'd just rather pay all the way down, for the next guy. Revenge narrative here, though, is kind of interesting. Last guy here, our full pay down option, Cade Otton going up against the Panthers, 2.7K. This is your punt tight end option for the week. Cameron Brate is likely to miss at the bare minimum this week, and who knows into the future, which is going to open up another opportunity for Otten. We just played him a couple of weeks ago. He's probably going to be pretty chalky in cash. That should not affect your choice at all. I view ownership as meaningless in cash. Likely going to be between a full punt here with Otten or the mid-price play with Everett. Just kind of depends, how everything shakes out this week. So we'll see what happens. Andrews and Kelsey, when we get talking about MME here, Andrews, again, very much in play. If I'm playing Lamar, I'm playing Andrews. If Andrews is out or limited, like I said, talking about Lamar, I'm out on them both. Kelsey is very interesting. And again, almost a must for me if I'm playing Mahomes. They're going to be pricey. But, to me, they're stacking only plays. I wouldn't play them as a one-off. I don't see a way of really probably playing them in a mini correlation, even with guys like Ryan and guys like guys like Mills, where you can save money. That's probably about the only way you could make it work, is to do a stack with, we'll say Matt Ryan and Alec Pierce and Robert Woods. That's pretty cheap. Then if you wanted to go ahead and do DPJ and Andrews, you can make it work. If you wanted to do a Kelsey and an Ayuk, probably make it work, but that's about the only way that's going to be without, them being part of a stack. But that's how I would play them if at all this week. We're going to talk about Gerald Everett earlier, going up against Seahawks. Again, 4K is a salary there. I love him in tournaments. I just need to be healthy. His ceiling gets raised by the fact that I don't think Keenan Allen's playing this week. They've got a bye week after this, so I don't see why he wouldn't just sit out this week, sit out the bye week, come back with 2 more weeks of rest, and be ready to go. I don't see the need to push bringing him back this week. We'll see. That's kind of just my opinion here, but I don't think we see Keenan Allen, which just ups, Everett and Eckler's value as well. I talked about how much I liked Eckler. And again, like I'd mentioned earlier in the cash, Seahawks have been torched by tight ends. They have given up the most points to a tight end by a very, very wide margin this year, almost 50% more points than the next highest team. So they're getting destroyed in the air by tight ends. His salary does make him a little bit awkward this week because, again, he's obviously not priced up, but in a salary-saving needy slate, I'd like to pay down a little bit more than this, but I think the ceiling more than makes up for it. Assuming he's healthy, I think he makes for a relatively reasonable play, and he's got some serious upside baked into him because of this matchup. I don't want to, but I got to talk about Kyle Pitts here going up against the Bengals. 4.3K on DraftKings. I mean, what more can I say about Pitts that hasn't been said here? Finally scored a touchdown last week, but the game outside of that was, again, subpar. He's going to have a blowout game eventually. I mean, it's going to happen. It's Kyle Pitts. He could be the, most talented tight end in the league. He just hasn't shown anything this year. Question is, when he has that game, are you going to be playing him? I won't be, but I cannot blame you if you continue to play him and stick around for it. Cade Otton, again, going up against Panthers, 2.7K, nice pay down option here. Some much needed salary relief at the tight end spot. A lot of people are going to be playing Cade Otton. Hard to argue against the play. You just need to know that you're going to have to eat some chalk to do so. I don't really like eating chalk with unproven players, but if I'm going to do it, tight end as a punt is a good way to do it. Probably I don't know if I'm going to be a full fade on him, but he's probably a guy I'm definitely going to be underweight on. Greg Dulcich going against the Jets at the bare minimum, 2.5K, absolute stone minimum on DK. Coming in after his debut where he scored a touchdown. Granted, it was on a broken play, so take that with a grain of salt. At worst, he's going to be the second highest owned tight end, and kind of much like Otton, very much unproven. I mean, Dulcich has literally played one game. Otton has played a little bit more, but he's actually been fully immersed in just the one game. For Dulcich, very simple for me. I'm going to be a full fade. That high of ownership with, that volatile of a player, I'm just out on. I mean, if somehow Dulcich beats me this week, and, remember, he's in a disgustingly inefficient offense there in Denver. If that beats me this week, whatever, so be it. I'll take it. And lastly, we'll get into some defense here. I mean, for cash, it comes down to two plays here for me. I'm looking to save money. You don't have a choice usually, especially in a week like this. You really don't have a choice. You got to pay down that defense. I'm liking either the Jets against that terribly inefficient, Broncos offense I just talked about. Jets are at 2.6K, or the Commanders going up against Green Bay. They come in at 2.5K. Those are basically the two options I'm looking at in cash. When we get to MME, I think I've came to a conclusion on how I'm going to at least proceed with the next handful of weeks, if not the rest of the year, if not for the next few years here. My advice is simply this. Correlate it with one of your running backs or use someone that's less than 5% owned. By far the most volatile position on the slate, by a mile. There is no correlation between price and how many points they score. You are just playing a guessing game here. In a perfect world, you play a defense that pairs with your running back, is cheap, and it's under 5% owned. For me, that means I'm left with basically four options that I probably will be playing in MME this week because it, checks all those boxes. I'm looking at the Chargers, I'm looking at the Bengals, I'm looking at the Seahawks, and I'm looking at the Texans this week. So that's where I'm at this week in week 7. Like I said, I really do like this week. I think that I'm on a lot of things that not a lot of people are. Hopefully you're following along with me. We can have an absolute smash like we did in baseball for that odd slate that I started out by saying, man, this slate makes me nervous because I feel like a lot of things other people aren't on are really good plays. And I was right. It all panned out. So let's hope for that again this week. And if you tail me, awesome. If not, then hopefully I'll at least be able to invite you over to the condo on the beach at some point in time. So if you didn't do so earlier, I need you to stop what you're doing. Pop over here right now. Subscribe to that channel. Turn on notifications so you get an alert when a new video comes out. Drop a like on this, and I will see you next week.